Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Clark, and we are here for our conference meeting for the Walden University class 6331, Teaching, Learning Strategies, and Technology. And so I'm going to, let me close that little thing and close another little thing on my desktop, and then I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so you should all be able to see my screen. And I don't know if it looks like your screens or not, but anyway, just to let you know, every week I post an announcement. So make sure when you sign on to the course homepage, you check those announcements. I usually just update on what we're going to be doing during the week, anything else that's pertinent. And basically what I want to talk about today, the objectives of this presentation are that we will basically just go through the assignments. I know all of you have been taking classes for a while, so you understand about discussion. One of the things that I love about this class, and you will hopefully love too, is that there's no like big formal APA paper, which is kind of fun and different compared to probably some of your other classes where you may have had multiple papers due. You do have lesson plans that will be due for each of the three major assignments. You have lesson plans that are due. And then you have the three major assignments. So in the announcements, I'm going to scroll down over here. I put up an assignment planner last week, and it just helps you to see what is due when. So for instance, this week you have the draft of your lesson plan due, and there is a template for that you'll want to fill out, and that's due by the end of the week. Your actual lesson, the video presentation, is not due until week 4. And at that point, you also post your video in the classroom and you get feedback. And then you have a final lesson plan as well. So you have a draft lesson plan, you do your video presentation, and then you do your final lesson plan. Those lesson plans, particularly the final lesson plans, do get turned in to Turnitin. Usually they show a fairly high percentage match because of the template matches and so forth. So I'm only concerned if it's like 100% match. So our three major assignments are the creating a video presentation, and that takes us through week 5. In week 6, we create a screencast. That takes us through it says through week 9, but there's a little bit of overlap here for assignment 3. You actually start the role play assignment with doing your draft lesson plan and so forth while you're finishing up your screencast assignment too. So you can see there's a little bit of crossover there, and actually this class has been revised a few times since I started teaching it a few years ago, and it's much better than it was. I think it's much more doable than it was. So, okay. So let's talk a little bit about the assignments. I'm going to come back up over here. I believe on week 2, this very slow computer right now, are a lot of resources for you. So week 2, resources. And there you have it, all the readings and so forth. So under week 2, you have your lesson plan template. Let's just take a look at that quickly because you will be doing the 3 lesson plans. And basically you just go through and you fill in all of the information here. One of the places where I find students often really struggle with, and we do talk about this in discussion, but is really stating your objectives in a way that they're really measuring what it is you're intending to teach about, and that they're learner-centered. So it says there the learner will, and that's helpful. And it's also helpful to have them related to time. So by the end of the learner will, list the steps for Foley catheter insertion by end of class. So it is helpful also to have them be time sensitive as well. but it's very important that they are learner sensitive. So the objectives are not so much about what you, the teacher, is doing, but what you want the students to get out of it and what you're going to be measuring for them to be doing. And so pretty much you're filling this out, getting into some depth. Another place I see where students missed is on these competencies down here. Sometimes the first time they do it, they forget the rationale. The rationale is just how are you showing that these, why are these the competencies and how is it showing up in your lesson plan? So that is the lesson plan. These two documents, the assignment planner, which is pretty much what I put in the front of the announcements, and then the grade center guide also can help you. All right, now what I'm looking for, there's a good document there on crafting learning objectives that I also, and the lesson plan job aid, all those things will help you with that first lesson plan. All right, so it's not in there. So I wanted us to take a look at the rubric for the first assignment. And maybe it's under assignment. If not, I can pull it up from my own file. So what is it you're supposed to be doing in this virtual lesson? Well, basically, you are teaching somebody how to do something. And you're doing that via a video. And if you noticed in the announcements, I made a couple of things, I think, pretty clear about what you want to look at with that. So let me pull the rubric up. Role play, creative video. There we go. Okay. So you notice that there are the checkpoints. So week 2 is that you actually have submitted your draft of your lesson plan. And it's kind of silly. You submit the draft and that it was saved using the proper name and you get the points. But I will actually also look at your lesson plan and give you some feedback in the grade book. So if on that first lesson plan you get a 25 and you're thinking, cool, I got all the points, I'm not going to, bother to look at the feedback, I still suggest looking at the feedback because you may get all the points, you may meet these 2 things, but I may have additional feedback for you. And then you get 25 points for when you actually upload your presentation and you give feedback to other students. So those are kind of what we call the check-it-offs. But then here is the actual rubric for the video. So as I said in the announcements, one of the things that I see often is that students do not adhere to the 3 to 5 minutes. And when this is usually an issue is when people go over 5 minutes. So you can see that that can take up to 10 points off of your grade because you went over 5 minutes. So that's where I said practicing, rehearsing, keeping in mind you may have to record and re-record. I know it's like not a lot of fun for most of us to see ourselves on video, but it's a good idea to actually watch what you recorded as well and see how it comes across. See if you're saying a lot of, like I've been saying a lot, I know already in this video. And if you want to re-record it and try for greater quality. And speaking of quality, another thing that students may have challenges with is the video quality or the audio quality. So that's another good reason to watch your video back before you submit it, and to keep in mind that you may have to have multiple takes on that. Presentation skills, so that you are making contact with the camera. So you're not just reading from the script, so that you're looking at the camera, trying to engage your learners, and it says hand motions are engaging, right? So I think some students think they could just write up the lesson plan and sort of just read it, and that is not going to lead to a really great grade for this. The video content, so basically this is that you're organized and that you're presenting things and that it goes clearly and it's not choppy and you're not searching around for a lot, sort of like I have done in the beginning of this conference here. Teaching strategies. So this is where I also, under teaching strategies and thought and creativity, I think is where students also can lose some points. So I really encourage you to use something to help you with your presentation. So if you're talking about, I don't know, say you want to teach someone how to drop and inject their insulin. So instead of just lecturing about it, you could have a syringe there, you could have the insulin there, you could maybe have something that you could inject the insulin into and really demonstrate that skill. So I really think that the video presentations do well with demonstrating a skill. And to use some props or something. I've had students do teaching on nutrition and foods, and they've had all the foods laid out. I've had students do all kinds of different presentations. One student wanted to do, not for this assignment, but a different assignment last semester. She wanted to demonstrate something to do with breastfeeding, and she wanted to use an actual person. And I had, since it was showing a human body part on a real live human, even with consent, we couldn't allow that. I had to go through administration and double check that, and they said no. So anyway, beyond that, just get really creative about how you're going to teach that's beyond just lecturing. That's another reason why we're keeping it at 5 minutes, because people really do lose their attention after about 5 to 10 minutes. So when you're teaching something, that's where you want to keep it at. And then the other part of the assignment is just your final lesson plan draft, and I will have given you some feedback on that with your first draft. So one thing that I find in the final lesson plan, so you've submitted your draft lesson plan, you've done your video, you've gotten feedback on your video, and then the following week you're doing your final lesson plan draft. A lot of students forget this evaluate and revise section. It's kind of easy to forget on that form, which I now put away, but you can lose up to 10 points by not reflecting back on how you would change things or do things differently. So that is something to keep in mind, and I will also try and remember to remind you in the announcements. So before we go on to the next assignment, I just want to see if I'm going to open it up for any questions. How about topics? Has anybody thought of their topic yet and want to share it? You'd have to unmute yourself to do that.
I was just wondering if I should unmute it or type it. I was thinking about identifying a tongue tie in the newborn to see if further intervention is needed.
Okay. And that sounds good to me. What would you use for like props and that sort of creative thing?
What I was thinking of is that there's a picture of a baby with a normal frenulum and another picture of a baby with a tongue tie, and I would pause it there and see if the students can identify which one is which. And then another creative one was I would present 3 scenarios, one that would require immediate intervention, one that you might need to wait and see, and then the other one, no intervention, but that would be at the end of the presentation.
Okay, yeah, and that may even be something that is like the follow-up part, that they could do. But you just want to time it out, because I think that would be pretty engaging. So time it out and see if you have time for doing that. So that sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody else? So, and I think I gave you some examples too. So one thing to think about, and if you come up with something, I'll pause again after we talk about the next 2 assignments. So you can be thinking about it, and if you want to ask questions at the end, you can. Students ask, for the 3 assignments, can I do the same thing across assignments? And no, you really can't, but you can do variations. So for instance, like the diabetic teaching, maybe the first video you talk about how to do the injection, and you show how to do the injection and all that. Maybe the second video or the screencast, which we're going to talk about next, you talk about diabetic diet, or how to manage your illness, which might include, diet, exercise, insulin, when to call your doctor, something like that. And then maybe the role play video would be role playing how to teach a diabetic how to drop their insulin and to give it. So even though it's a little bit related to the first video, I think it's different enough that you're teaching with someone else that would work. So that's an example of how it's kind of the same topic, but it's different across all three assignments. The next assignment is called creating a screencast, and nobody seems to know what a screencast is, right? What is a screencast? It sounds interesting, right? Kind of like a podcast, but it's a screencast. Well, basically what it is it's a video of whatever's on your screen. So a lot of students will do a PowerPoint, and then they'll use the screencast software, and in the resources there's some information on that. And so then they'll use their PowerPoint and do their screencast from their PowerPoint. And so that's usually the way students do it. But basically, again, it is whatever's on your screen. So like I'm showing this right now, but I could do a screencast on, let's see, how do I navigate the Walden University homepage? And I could go through each of these tabs. I'm recording right now with Zoom. At the end, I would have a video, and I could show that. And I have had students do that, how to do something or other on Blackboard or whatever, and the the audience was students. So, and it was from their own place of work or what have you. So it was, or how to use the library. So they come in here and they go to the library and show how to look up an article on CINAHL. So that's another option too that you could use. So long as you have the video of your screen, that works. So those are kind of the two big options that I see students using with screencast. Okay, one thing I encourage you not to do that I have had a few students do is to put your screen up and then take a little video camera and video your screen. It doesn't work. The quality is really bad. You're fumbling around with the video and the screen. And so the idea is to really use the technology to the maximum to get a good screencast. So for screencast during week 6, it's kind of that same thing that I said with the video assignment. You do your draft. It's of your lesson plan. It's submitted for, and you name it properly and you submit it. And in theory, you get the 25 points if you submit it on time. And again, you'll want to look and see what my feedback is, because even if you get the 25 points, I'll probably be looking at that. And this one is your script. It's not your necessarily your lesson plan there. In week 8, and it can be fairly general. You don't have to write out every single word that you're going to say in your script, but it should be enough that I can tell where you're headed and if it makes sense. Then you're going to record your screencast and provide feedback to 2 of your colleagues, and you get points for that. And then you have your final submission. And here's the rubric for that. Again, staying in that 3 to 5 minutes. So really timing yourself, watching it back so that you can see that the audio quality is good in particular. And making sure your on-screen elements, sorry about that, my email's coming in there. Making sure your on-screen elements are really, let me close that email. Making sure your on-screen elements are really visually appealing, but also really keep the learner engaged, so that it's not, you're not just, again, kind of, you've got some words up there and you're just reading them and you're going from slide to slide to slide. There should be some engagement there, some nice graphics are helpful, things to keep people engaged, and that you're going beyond just the words that are there. And it's almost like minimal words on the screen, more graphics is probably more effective than having everything written out that you're going to say. Bullet points are good too. So keep that in mind. Presentation skills. So that's that you're, obviously engaged with your learners and, show that you have some interest in the topic as well. You want your content to be clear and learning objectives should be identified. And usually it says beginning or end of the lesson. It is not, to get the full points, it's beginning and end of the lesson. So just these are our objectives for today. And then at the end, these were the objectives we covered today. And of course, at the beginning, you talk about the learning need. And I think all of the assignments ask for some active participation where they pause the video and you give the students something to go and do. You do not actually have to pause the video. You just you tell the learners, now you can pause the video. I'll be here when you get back, and this is what you're going to go do. And thought and creativity. So this is another place where sometimes students lose points if they, if it looks like obviously they just put some words on a PowerPoint, didn't use a lot of graphics, weren't really super engaged with their audience, they would lose thought and creativity points there. Okay, and then I think you have a final, what else is due there? That's it for that assignment. Hang on a second. Yeah, and then you have a final lesson plan that is due with that assignment as well. Okay, any questions on the screencast? I know it seems like it's a ways out.
So for the second video, as a follow-up for my first video, assuming I can get it in 5 minutes, I could do post-frenectomy care. I could do that for nursing's nursing staff so that they can teach parents about that.
Sure, you could do it that, or you could do it for the parents, either way.
Okay.
Yep. It's nice if you have some continuity, and again, obviously something you're interested in, that you have some knowledge around, that you're passionate about, and it sounds like that works well for you, Ashton. So anyone else questions about screencast? All right, we're moving right along. And so the final assignment is the role play video demonstration. So again, that same thing where you're submitting a draft of your lesson plan, and that you are, listing out your objectives and all that stuff. The actual role play demonstration. So this is not due till week 11, which is the very end of the class. And so this one does not go through peer review. You turn it in, and I'm the only one that gets to see it. And it is a role play. So what do we mean by role play? Well, we mean that you are showing how to do something with someone else there. Occasionally I have had students that ran into an issue. I had a student that moved like the week before, and she didn't have anyone to do the role play with, and she ended up using a large stuffed animal or a big doll or something like that to do the role play. But that is probably not really very effective. This is something that you would do with another person. So usually this is about teaching another person something, but being, the objectives are not so much what you're teaching the other person, but they're based on the learner who is watching the video, if that makes sense. So if I was doing, some kind of diabetic education, or teaching a patient how to give themselves heparin, my objectives are that the student or the learner, will observe a heparin shot being given, and will list the however many steps to give a heparin shot, and or Lovenox, and will whatever. So again, it's focused more on what you want the learners to get out of it versus what you are actually teaching in the role play video, if that makes sense. And it will make sense as we get closer to that. So I've tried to think, where do students lose points here? I think by the time we get to role play demonstration, students are doing pretty well. They're pretty comfortable with using the technology, and with the lesson plan part, again, not forgetting the evaluate and revise section. So with the actual lesson, the video, being sure again to stay in that 3 to 5 minutes. There's also, you need to, there's a form for your participant to sign off on, a release form. You can just submit that when you submit either the lesson plan or the video as an attachment, so you don't need to fax it to me or anything, and I actually prefer that it's there in the grade book with the assignment, so I always know where to find it should there be an issue, versus things getting faxed and lost and what have you. The video quality, again, that can be an issue, so checking your lighting, checking your audio quality. So prepare your role play person that you may have to do this more than one time. The presentation skills, so sometimes what can happen with the role play videos, the person is turned and they're talking to the person and they're doing their teaching or showing them how to do a dressing change or whatever, and they're there with that person, and then they're not coming back to their learners. I've also seen where students will come in and do the role play, whatever it is they're teaching with the person, but they never address their learners. So they do things like they have forgotten the learning objective, they never stated the learning need, they showed the role play part, but they didn't address their learners. So that can cause quite a bit of loss in points. So that is something to keep in mind. I would say that usually happens about once or twice each term. So again, I will try and remind in the announcements to not do that, because you could lose 20, 30 points by not doing that. And that's it for the 3 major assignments. So I'm going to stop the screen share and see if you have any other questions. Okay, so Demetrius wrote a question. Oh, it says it was private. Well, sorry about that. But what are the parameters of the topic? So if you're unsure of your topic, you can always run it by me. Put it in the Q&A forum. But I think it's good to keep it open as to what are the parameters. So when we look at the week 2 assignment, virtual lessons to introduce, reinforce, or demonstrate important ideas, concepts, and skills. And so I usually think of the first one as a skill that you're teaching. Any other questions? Do we need to have an APA formatted reference page with our lesson plans? No, you do not. Occasionally students will use a reference in the lesson plan, and you can just put it at the bottom of the template there. That's fine. So again, that's kind of the joy of this class. I mean, you're still referencing everything in your discussions every week. But in the actual assignments, it's more on the actual doing and teaching and using the technology, which is fun. Oh, I hear a puppy barking. Okay. And of course, we'll still be dialoguing. There's always the Q&A forum, which, really, if you have specific questions about the assignment, that's a great way to do it, so that others might have the same questions and I can answer them. And of course, you can also get me by email, and my office hours are on Mondays when you can use my cell phone or text me. All right. So I hope this was helpful, and you can also, I'm going to stop the recording in just a moment, and it takes a little while. It may take me until tomorrow to get the recording up, but you can always review that.